recording this because we might use it as a teaching tool later on. You just never know. And there are folks who can't be here tonight, so I would like to welcome all of you to Aesthetic Impact's presentation this evening, developing your observational skills using Phase 2, Phase 4 sensory perception. I'm Teresa Frisch, and I am a controlled remote viewer, still in training. I don't consider myself operational, and I am currently an analyst in training, meaning that I love to look at other people's presentations and try and decipher what they got. And I see we have a couple of more folks arriving, and I'm passing out extra mics. And there we go. Oh, I've run out of mics, so we have one person without a mic. Sharon, it only accommodates so many. So if you would like a mic at some point and would like to speak, just text into the room, please. And everybody, just to remind you that there is a texting area down below, and you can type in your questions or comments. Welcome, Lyn Buchanan. And if you will notice, guess who's in the audience? Dan Chevalier. Back to the housekeeping details. I do need to read a disclaimer just because we don't necessarily touch on medicine per se, but a lot of this information that we cover in these webinars is very much psychologically oriented, and so therefore it's probably just best because you never know what will strike a chord with someone and what they might take to heart and take seriously. So I need to remind everybody that Aesthetic Impact Informational Services does not provide medical advice. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call 911 or your physician immediately. Contact your physician or other qualified healthcare provider if you have any questions regarding a medical condition. Aesthetic Impact Informational Services does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that might be mentioned on the website as a substitute for professional medical advice. The contents of Aesthetic Impact Informational Services, such as text, graphic, images, and other material posted here, are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Reliance on information contained on Aesthetic Impact Informational Services is solely at your own risk. And a little bit about myself. I always read everybody else's bio, so I suppose I should include a bit of background on myself as my presenter. I chose to investigate anything and everything that I could find on intuition and mind-body medicine and holistic medicine because I was working on learning more about the nursing intuition aspect. And I've met a lot of people because I found out that intuition is being studied by at least a dozen sciences, and everyone has their own language. But eventually I was having more psi or paranormal type experiences, could not explain them, and I ended up studying controlled remote viewing with Lyn Buchanan. Lyn's my friend, mentor, and he helped my life make sense again. Because unfortunately, I can't find anyone who has studied the communication between the subconscious and conscious minds in the way that the military Stargate unit developed their protocols for controlled remote viewing. There's a theory and a psychology and a methodology that is reproducible with controlled remote viewing. And once a person is trained, which is a totally different seminar or webinar altogether, once a person is trained, you begin to understand yourself. And as Lyn teaches us with controlled remote viewing, every time you work a target, it's not to learn more about the target, it's to learn more about yourself. And part of that is because your two minds are learning to communicate. And a bit of that is each of us learn things differently growing up. different associations, and our minds will not only remember things differently, but it will associate those memories like a thesaurus and with symbology and metaphor. And so I was talking to people about remote viewing, and it occurred to me that there are, if nurses need to learn to observe their environment, and it would be to their benefit, that there are lots of people who maybe would appreciate learning what Lyn's teaching us about controlled remote viewing and learning to observe your environment, because an artist, a graphic artist, a law enforcement officer, a paramedic, as far as I'm concerned, anybody who is not just intuitive, but who wants to just learn to pay more attention. And so that's how I came to be teaching this course tonight, and I shouldn't say teaching, presenting. And Lyn will probably give me a little gruff about that, knowing him. But I find it very valuable, all these things, because I've learned more about myself, and I have increased my sensitivity and observer-type skills, and I try to document things. We're working on some precognitive studies, and I think it really helps to just pay attention. So, on to just a tad bit of information. Uh-oh, this is going to be interesting. Maybe. There we go. For most of us, a great deal of our lives is spent almost in a fog, and we tend not to truly see the world around us. And I did take this from Lyn's website. I did add a little information in the introduction and the abstract to this invitation to this event. These exercises that we're going to talk about are beneficial for anyone wanting to improve their observational skills in everyday life, whether it be an artist, law enforcement officer, medical personnel, or a remote viewer. This exercise was developed to train you to see things that you are right before your eyes. It may sound like a simple thing to do, but in fact you will see just how easy it is to look right at something and not see it. The targets for this exercise have been selected to match targets you would have in remote viewing sessions. Remote viewers will recognize that their sensory descriptors would be recorded in Phase 2 or Stage 4 if they were in session. As Lyn says, if we can't observe what's in front of us, how could he send a remote viewer around the world to describe something? The English language is based on nouns. If you give something a name, you're locked into it. Describe the car. Silvery, holds 200 people, flies. I'm thinking that car's not going to get too good a gas mileage. And you realize it isn't a car. That's a remote viewing session. What it is better to do is describe, not identify. Things that you would look for are colors, shapes, dimensionals, relationships, gender, age, textures, sounds, smells, tastes, weather, land, water, space, ambiance, biologicals, luminance, temperature, densities, orientation, directions, patterns, measurements, and other things that you might have happened to notice. Relationships are frequently limited to relationships between people, like father-son, mother-daughter. But don't forget to contrast and compare, such as rounder, taller than me, closer. There are, I didn't count them, and Lyn updates his site all the time. You can find more Phase 2 and Phase 4 practice targets at Lyn's site, which is www.crviewer.com. But what we're going to talk about today just a little bit of discussion. Is not rocket science. Here's the photo from Lyn's site that I chose for today. And I actually had this session, which is probably here on my laptop, that I had done a fairly decent job with describing. And Lyn, I think you have a mic, and Dan, you have a mic. Would you be willing to make some comments? Somebody's breathing. I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. You're a little soft. Can you turn it up? It's my speaker.
I can try.
No, actually, it's me. We had visitors here today, and we turned the volume down. Have you been able to hear anything I said?
Oh, yeah, clearly.
Okay, I can hear you now. So, oh, great. A little icon there. So,
this is a deceptive picture here. One of the things that came out in a group description of this is how many boats there are, and I was very surprised because I had looked at this picture thoroughly, I don't know how many times, and I didn't see the other two boats. You know, and I'm trained to do this.
I only see one other one. It's matching on the other side, and it has a red cover on it. I only see one. There's a pile of stuff at the end of the dock.
I know. I forget now where it was, but one of the people actually showed me the parts of the two other boats. Anyway, this is a sort of deceptive one. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Some of the things that when we were in class, we actually worked this target, and we were noticing, okay, if you were in a remote viewing session, you could possibly, I shouldn't say you could possibly, there are people who are good enough that if you wanted them to count down so many people and describe that particular person, you could. I am not that proficient. But you'll notice, look at everybody's feet. There's a person with a blue shirt on is wearing shoes, or appears to be wearing shoes. You can blow this photo up and notice that. So it's actually, there are a lot of games on the net now where I see them and play them where you try and find the things that are missing. But you could see we have males, we have females, we have people balancing loads on their head. We do not. Most everybody who, I won't say this, appears to be working are people wearing dresses. We have brightly colored clothing. Most everyone, we have a mix of dresses and skirts. We have a mix of people with sleeves and without. We have various patterns. I would say if I was describing the fabric, it's probably cotton-like. We have the pier, which is elevated. It appears to be made of wood. You have, looks like something like seaweed going down the sides. You could describe the planks that people are walking on. How would you describe those planks? They're linear, many, multiple, parallel. If you were to mentally rap on them with your knuckles, what would it sound like? Would it sound hollow? Would it sound like, what does a woody something sound like density? The environment is obviously watery. There is a wateriness to this environment. It appears to be a large body of water. I would almost guess that it's an ocean or sea, but maybe not. So if a remote viewer were to say that they had salt-like smells or sea or ocean-type descriptors, I would probably give them a thumbs up on that. It's a good possibility, but you can't. That would be a smell. And Dan?
I'm not sure if I have a mic or not.
You do.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
guess good thing I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was in here.
Yes, you are here. I was going to say, would you like to make some color comments about this? I'm going to look off to my right here, and
Oh yeah,
I'm going to look at my
I've helped
laptop
some
and see if I
people
can
with
get
the
that
P2 exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you have to realize is that if you cannot describe what's in front of you, you're going to have a hard time doing it, whether you're remote viewing or trying to tell someone on a phone what you saw. In order to describe things, you have to be able to see. And everybody takes for granted what they see, and they miss a lot of things. And that's why doing P2 exercises with other folks is really good, because you compare notes, and then you start realizing some of the things that you missed. And so you end up broadening your horizon when you see something. Like an artist will look at a wall, and someone will say it's white, and the artist will say, no, it's not white. It's got many colors in it. You can see shades of darkness, or you can see maybe some red or yellow from something reflecting on it. But the idea is to be able to come up with as much as you can and to see as much as you can. And Lyn was in the room tonight. One of the things that he's always said is that if you do not have words to be able to describe what you see, then you're pretty much going to pass over it because you have too much difficulty describing it. So what happens is, as you go through these pictures and you start describing it, like the pole in the picture, you can say it's long, rectangular.
And Dan, I think your mic might be just a bit far away, possibly.
Can you hear my mic too good?
A little bit better. Sorry about my dog just flew in and out. Sorry about that. But that's what happens when, no, you're fine. That's what happens, though. You get a little feedback. I'll hear myself talking while you're, we have open mics, and that's what happens. So I'm sorry, but I want these folks to be able to hear what you have to say. So that's why I interrupted.
That's okay. Am I too low, or?
Oh, no, you sound great now.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess one of the things is that you learn to expand your vocabulary. If you have the words to describe it, you're in good shape. If you don't have the words to describe it, then it's going to be hard to describe to someone else. And as you do these, I had someone who came to me one time, and she said, I want to be able to, she was a remote viewer, and when she went to Target, she was never able to describe the weather that was there. And she says, how do I get better in session to be able to describe the weather? Because I'd really like to have this as part of my forte. And I said, do P2 targets, and you start looking at what the weather is, and you describe it. And what happens is you open up a line of your intuitive consciousness, and what happens is, as remote viewers find out, that they will give you a lot of information, but unless you tell it what you want, you're not going to be able to do it. So by doing P2 exercises and singling out the weather patterns and always doing that, you're opening up a conversation with your subconscious saying, hey, I want to know about the weather. So in session, he'll start giving you weather clues and stuff. And as far as other people go, people who aren't remote viewers, just the fact that you expand your vocabulary by trying to describe what's in the picture, you'll be able to do a much better job to pass on a description to someone else.
Dan, you're fading again.
Okay, I'm a little disorganized, but I hope that it came through.
I did find my session on my laptop, so I'm retrieving it.
By the way, down below the picture for everyone is a scale, and you can set that to any scale you want, up to 400%, so that you can move around the picture and see things in greater detail if you want to.
Can you guys see that I'm doing that? Am I affecting your screens?
Not at all.
Okay, sorry. I actually didn't know that, Lyn. I have the little counter down there with the Zoom on. I didn't know. It's probably WebEx, though. Sorry.
Yeah,
But
WebEx lets every person do that for themselves. You know, as many people as oh, now then you did it.
yeah, I synced all of you to
Yeah.
mine.
Oh, okay. One of the things that I have never seen anybody say about this site is there are clouds in the sky. And you know, when you go to describing things, it's like a child will hold something up so that they can see it and say, "Mommy, look at this," because if they can see it, they think you can see it too. And there are things that are so obvious to us that we feel like we don't need to explain it to others or even mention it. And you could spend hours and hours on this one target picture and never really describe the whole thing. Like, you know, the picture shows the treads that are in the tires on the boat. And most people would think a boat has tires. Well, yeah, it is. But there is so much in a simple thing like this that you can see right in front of you that you just take for granted because you can see it. That doesn't mean that somebody else will too. And when you go describing things, like even the condition of a patient, if you're a nurse, then there are things that are so obvious to you that you don't think they even mention them. And those things can be very important. If you're working a police case, you witnessed a wreck or something like that, it's the same situation. Anyway, I'll quit and let y'all look at the picture.
I think I am going to go ahead and send this myself, and then it's really fun when we do this as a group and we put our results in a file area in Lyn's class, and then we can compare and see what we got. Did any of you guys happen to do this? Actually happen to write anything down? And we do have a little bit of commentary. Yeah, I had a little trouble hearing Dan. Most of it came
No,
through
I didn't do it.
And great analogy, Cindy says. And we can go ahead and, but Lyn, now if you were to advise someone to describe something in a remote viewing session, and I know I keep going back to that, but we're being trained to describe in that particular environment or course, so that's why I keep referring to it. But would you advise someone, if they were practicing, to take a section? Would you describe all the people, or would you take the left-hand corner and describe everything you see there? Or would you start with all the colors or the environment? Or is there a method to your descriptive style, or is it just all personal?
Oh, excuse me, I've been muted here. I muted myself so I wouldn't be making background noise. Generally, what I tell people is that you tend to see the whole thing as a whole thing. And if you want to really just start describing details, you can do it by sectioning off a part of the picture, like just the women carrying loads. You can go into details like how many women are there, how many men are there. I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's only 4 men, not 5. And then you can say, okay, what colors do I see? And just go through naming all the colors. And as you start picking any one aspect of a picture, you're going to start automatically noticing things that you didn't notice as you got the overall picture. And so, you know, this applies to when you're talking to people or anything, that if you can start giving details, they will start understanding more. If you just say, I bought a car to 10 people, 10 people are going to get 10 different, mental images. But if you start saying, I bought a car, and man, it's red, and it's a convertible, and, then all of a sudden, everybody starts understanding what you're talking about. But, yeah, any way you want to do it, just so you focus and get away from the overall picture, so that, what's the pattern on the dress of the second woman from the left? And the third person from the left, is that a man or is that a woman? How can you tell? Take a look, examine it, take a look very closely. What's the name of the boat? Lady K. And what's the G? There's a G underneath it. And what's the shape of the boat? And so forth. Anyway, as you start getting details on these, you'll start noticing things, and you will start understanding more about the picture. And when you go to describing it to other people, you'll get into the habit of giving descriptors so that people understand you. Anyway, I'll shut up again, muting my mic.
I just, thanks to my son, because I thought I had sent this to myself. I retrieved it from my laptop, but this is it. You can practice a picture like this for as long as you want. And all I did was, I had no method. I just started with colors. And you will actually find that, I was going to bring this up when Dan was talking. He was talking about white. There is one gentleman who is a student of Lyn's, and when he came to visit and take a class or audit a class, there was white in the room, and somebody said, well, it's just white. Well, he took that, and I don't know if he said it was ecru but when you go to the paint store and you want to buy white paint, they have an entire brochure just white. So there are actually some people that green is green is green. And actually there are lots of greens. Emerald green, sea green, blue green, mint green,
lime green.
Lime green. Yeah, I was going to say, if we wouldn't have feedback issues, we could just, all of us, be yelling out colors of green. What are some more greens? Here's turquoise. That's a shade of green. Aquamarine. That's a shade. It's blue-green, but to some people, they see more green. There's sea green. I've got Pepto-Bismol pink. Not to put in a plug for Pepto-Bismol, but I'd be willing to bet, unless you're colorblind, most of you know exactly what color pink that is. Pale yellow versus golden yellow, turquoise, charcoal and light gray skirt, aquamarine, maroon. Maroon, you've got wine and maroon and burgundy, but they all have that purpley red tone. Fuchsia, another close relative of maroon, same family, a shade or two off. Fire engine red. That's nowhere really near like maroon, but it's in the red family. So red is not red is not red. Sky blue, black, bright white, blue white, ochre. Say that right, I always did hate that word. Rusty brown, orangey red, dull gray, anchor. Sea green, beside the bow. Indigo, tan, sapphire blue, because that's what color I thought the water appeared to be, but actually there's lots of shades of blue in that water, and green. And opaque white, and that's the lamp bulbs. We've actually gone so far as in class to have people say that, and also don't have much of this descriptor here because I've got a lot more stuff. If you go to, and now I'm going to put in a plug for Crayola, but if you actually pull up Crayola, they've got a lot of colors just in a crayon box. So if you're not good with colors, there you go. I have yet to, Dan, can you or Lynn or anyone think of anything you could do that with sounds? I'm trying to think, but If you plug the word in for sound, I bet you might get things like a thesaurus, like beep, honk, you know, all that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure. Okay, texture.
You know,
go ahead.
I was going to say, when you think of sound, most people think, well, geez, you know, a sound is a sound. But I'll tell you, there are so many descriptors of sounds, and once you start investigating it, you'll understand there's just an amazing amount of sounds, pitches, and everything else.
Yeah, when people start, you know, like testing their vocabulary and things like sounds, they will usually start naming the sounds of things like bell sound, bee sound, singing, things like that. But there's also pitch, tone, volume. Is a sound steady? Does it warble? Is it intermediate? Is it intermittent? Things like that, patterns, yeah. And so there are just thousands of things. One of the things about learning to do this and learning to do these pictures like this and start describing is that you become a more interesting person. You become more understandable. If you have kids, oh man, teach them to do this. Their grades will go up. Their creative writing will go up. Their creative thinking will go up. Their public speaking ability will be enhanced. And even their ability to deal with more than just one clique in their school, you know, they can start dealing with more types of people, and they don't get locked into one clique or another. This is actually an amazing thing, and if you get your kids doing this, oh, listen, the change that you'll see in your kids is just phenomenal.
Let me ask you a question, Lyn. Do you think by doing this, your senses become sharper?
Oh, sure. You start using them. Yeah. You exercise your senses. You become aware of things. Not just this, but also the other things that we do in remote viewing. I've had a lot of people call back and write and say things like, I'm 40 years old and I'm just now realizing that I've been asleep for 39 of them. And, you know, it opens up a whole world to you that's been right there in front of you all the time anyway.
Yeah, I think people start equating your sharpness sometimes to being a little more psychic. And in a way, it does heighten your psychic awareness. I mean, everybody has psychic abilities. They don't realize it, but they do.
Well,
by doing exercises like this.
They also relate it to your intelligence.
Yes.
You know, you appear more intelligent whether you are or not. And in fact, I think it does increase your intelligence.
Oh, without doubt. It does.
But you can see all the textures. I made a stab at describing all the textures that are found just in that one small piece of real estate, that little pier with people walking on it. And I barely skimmed the surface. That's a thumbnail sketch. And we have a comment here, the appearance of intelligence is at least a good start, and so one can attain the real thing. Good point. We have Ronaldo is here, and he is a viewer, and he says he heard languages with this photo. I unmuted you, sir. Would you like to say anything about that? You don't have to.
I think you got it muted, right?
No, I don't. Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
But the motion, excuse me, if you look at the photo, there are some things you would have to know by association. If you came from a desert and had never seen a lake before or a boat, you wouldn't understand or make the association. Wave-like, side-to-side, bob, billowy, maybe from skirts moving, swishy, walking, forward move it, secured back and forth with arms, strolling, marching, walking, suspended spatial feel, like walking on that pier. Breezy, rhythmic, perched, and balanced. But Lyn, that point I just made about the associations and learning, you have anything that you might want to say to that? Like if you haven't been exposed to something before, you don't know what it's like.
Yeah, one of the things about, you know, reading books and watching good movies and doing things like this right here is that you expose yourself to life that you haven't had a chance to live. And as far as your mind is concerned, it lets you live in ways that you don't have the opportunity to otherwise. And it increases your ability, it increases your experiential life, it increases everything about you, and it makes you more well-rounded. This is a really good way to do this. And, you know, if you just like open a magazine and see a picture of a Marlboro Man or something like that, and you pass it right on by. But if you go back and you look at that Marlboro Man and you see the pattern in the boots, you see the fading, where the blue jeans are faded in the knees or in the seat or something like that and not faded in other parts, you all of a sudden start learning things about a way of life that you've never had. And this is a good thing because it gives you experience and it teaches you. It makes you a better person.
I was just looking at what I wrote down. If I were an analyst looking at somebody else's session, I wrote down King Tut, and I said about the arms that are bent on the light. But see, the top of that light where it's one side of the arm's going up and one's going down. To me, I wrote down King Tut, like walk like an Egyptian. Good grief. What you don't think of, I swear.
The other thing, too, about doing these is that a lot of times you have senses that don't come up in a photo, like smells, for instance, and you'll sit there and you'll swear, I smell the salt water of the ocean, or that kind of chemical smell that you smell of the ocean. Or sometimes you may pick up moods or what's going on there, and you don't quite know why you're getting that. And believe it or not, that's your extra sense. You're picking up the stuff from the picture. You may think that maybe you're making it up, but sometimes you really are sensing it even though you're not there. You can pick that up.
Yeah, Ronaldo heard languages. You can pick these things up, and of course this is things that you would just blow off and say, oh, well, that was just my imagination. But the fact is that if you hear languages, then you start saying, okay, the language I heard, was it guttural? Was it smooth? Was it choppy? Was it, mush-mouthed? And was
male or female with tone?
Male or female, things like this. And what you find out is that somehow your actual subconscious mind has actually gone out to that site and experienced some things for you that even the picture won't give you.
Yeah, I could give an example. One time doing one of these P2 exercises, the photograph was a bunch of cows standing out in the field, and at the edge of that field there were a bunch of cars and stuff that were left there, kind of like a junkyard. And we were doing this thing, and I suffer from allergies. Every end of August into the beginning of September, I always suffer from pretty good allergies. And I was doing this picture, and I kept sniffling, and my eyes kept watering. And I'm wondering, what the heck's going on? I feel like I'm getting allergies. And we were doing this, I think, in the winter. And come to find out, this picture was probably right at the end of August, beginning of September, the way the picture presented itself. But I didn't realize that I had picked this up, but my senses were actually picking that up. And weird things that happened, but that was kind of neat.
Yeah, believe it or not, when I do these pictures, when I select these pictures, I don't just get pretty pictures. I try to go into how they would help people. And one of the things I found very early on is that I have to be very careful not to select a picture that will have a quickly blinking red light in it, because people will look at this static picture and a part of their mind will actually go to the place, and if a person has epilepsy, it can actually throw them into an epileptic seizure.
That's right.
And so I have to be very careful when I select these pictures, not only picking them as far as how they will help people, but also picking them so that they don't hurt somebody. This is a real neat experience when you start really getting into this description, and when you transfer this over into your everyday life. You know, you're cooking a pot of stew. You look at that stew and start describing how it looks, smells, how it boils, everything. And all of a sudden you start experiencing life in a way you never have before, and the world around you.
Have another one here. Let me upload another one. And
yeah, the picture that we have right now, you can spend hours on that if you really went through all the senses and everything. I help mentor class for our at our website, and one of the things is I get these P2 exercises, and people don't have hours and hours to work on it. So what I do is I select certain parts of the target that I want them to work on, and they still spend a long time on it, and I try to narrow down the things I want them to get.
If I switch over to my desktop, I've got Dave Beatty's. All right, so give me just a second to change around a little bit here. Sorry.
Oh.
Now you're looking at my desktop.
Hey, we can see all Teresa's files.
How exciting is that?
Oh, I don't want to touch that one. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you better not.
Get myself in trouble.
All right, can you guys see Dave Beatty's session here?
Yeah.
I hope. Lynn?
Yes, but on my screen it's very small, so
yeah, I'm wondering if I
have
can
to zoom in.
Okay, I can zoom in maybe. I can try. There we go. Ooh,
there you go.
A WebEx tool, son of a gun. All right, this is a most excellently written outline form P2 target exercise, like we would write it if we finished a remote viewing session and we're writing our final report and our summary to hand in. And Lynn asked one of our fellow viewers if he would share it as a teaching tool because it was so good. But as he described, and I don't have the feedback photo, I'm sorry, but as he moved around, Cindy was mentioning, she texted in, she was so hung up on, as a beginner, on the mechanics, you know, that she didn't do as well as she thought that she might, if just because she was hung up on the mechanics instead of describing a picture. But the way this is written out, as there are 3 biologicals at the target. 2 are human, and then he just goes on to describe those 2 humans. Both are female, East Indian, complexions are mid-brown in color, fully dressed, outdoors, seated, and near each other. All those perceptions pertain to those 2 humans. Then he wrote their different ages. Then one is an adult, wears a garment with a dress hem, light mauve in color, and bears a pattern. The pattern, he indents again, of sun representations, then those further defined and described as with 8 points, gold in color, and centers that are yellow. So he's further finely defined or described the sun representations. Then going back, he really honed in on that garment. They were back to pant-like, and then the pant-like are loose-fitting, light mauve, and then the light mauve is darker than dress-like. They're flat woven, and then back out, he starts to describe the coat. And he gets 2 descriptors for that, and then he moves back, and all are laundered and clean. Oops, sorry, I clicked on that. The footwear, open-toed, flip-flop style, and gray. Then he describes the jewelry of rings. The rings are golden color, 1 on each on 2 first fingers of the left hand. Then he continues with the jewelry. A bracelet that's gold, appears like a watch on the left wrist. And then back out, you see he's kept going on each of the things that he wanted to describe. Then he went back out, and he's now back in the same column or level. So we're back to describing the adults. I know this looks a little complicated. This adult is seated on a cot, facing left of center, hands are together in the lap, legs are crossed, under the cot-like thing. He didn't say thing, I could do that in. Left in front of the right ankle hooked over the left heel. Okay, the second human is a toddler. And I think you're getting the idea.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
One of the things about this is that, you know, the looking at the pictures and perceiving what's there teaches you to communicate with yourself. Reporting like this is something we teach in the controlled remote viewing in order to let you communicate what you know to somebody else in a very clear way. And basically, this is a part of controlled remote viewing where we teach you communication skills, both with yourself and with others. And a lot of people compare controlled remote viewing to psychics, which it's not. But a psychic will sit there and generally just give you just give you one thing after another and in random order as it hits them and all that. And for the police, for archaeologists who want to know where do I dig and things like that, that's not good. And this is one of the reasons why there is so much bias against psychics, mainly because they have all this knowledge and they can't really communicate it in other people's language. And so this is a part of the things that we teach when we teach remote viewing, is to teach people how to communicate with themselves and with others. It may look awfully stilted and it may look like a lot of work, but actually when a person learns to do this, their communication skills just skyrocket and it becomes very easy. Yeah.
By the way, you'll notice this third biological is a bird, by the way. I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. I was going to say, can you imagine talking on the phone with someone and you're trying to describe a picture to them, a photograph you had taken, and at the other end they're trying to sketch it and trying to make a duplicate of it from just your description? It seems pretty impossible if you think about it, but you can get pretty close if you're able to describe things.
One of the things we used to do is go into a group of salesmen, and one of them would look at a picture and try to describe it to the rest of them, and all the others would try to draw it. And almost every time you'd wind up having a fight and people throwing things in the room. Salesmen are very good at selling you things, but when it comes to communication and actually understanding what somebody else is saying, they're not always all that good about it. And so this is one of the things we used to go in and show people you know, show a group of salesmen that communication skills are, one, something that is extremely important. Listening skills is even more important. And two, it's something that they better work on, or else they're not going to make sales.
This last line, other things I saw, generally the scene is tranquil and economically impoverished. How would we know that,
Lynn? Sorry, I keep muting so that I won't.
Oh, that's okay. How would we know that something appears tranquil and economically impoverished? And while you're talking about that, I'm going to switch back.
Yeah.
Somebody want to talk about ambiance?
Yeah, one of the things we found is that we don't have 5 normal senses, we have 7. You have the normal 5 senses that you have a body part to stick them to, like sound to the ear, smell to the nose, and all that. But you also have a sense of ambiance. You take 100 people, and one by one you stick them into a big cathedral. They're all going to get that same feeling of awe and reverence and so forth. You stick them on the edge of a cliff, they're all going to get that whoa feeling and all. It's a repeatable feeling that is dependable, and it's called the sense of ambiance. The 7th sense is your psychic sense, and a lot of times a normal psychic will sit there and they will read you, not your palm or their crystal ball or whatever. They're actually reading you because they're picking up on the ambiance. That doesn't mean they're being dishonest, because they may not understand that that reading a room, just like a poker player, is a skill, and it's a definite sense that we have that can be depended on. And so I hate to go back into the remote viewing thing here, but when we teach remote viewing, we teach the difference between ambiance as a feeling and being able to go send your mind halfway around the world and describe what's going on there. So anyway, to answer Teresa's question, you have a sense of ambiance. You can look at this picture right here and pick up the ambiance of it and get a feeling from it. And that feeling will be repeatable, it'll be definite, it'll be describable.
Yeah, we had a gal who picked up from this photo here. We had a gal that picked up, not only does it smell like the ocean, but she said she can smell strong BO. So I don't know if you would classify that as ambiance, but she was able to pick up those things. And you'd be able to pick up the mood.
Can you guys see my desktop again?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, sorry about the clutter. This is like a new computer. I'm still getting used to it. But, all right, Dave Sell is now a chicken owner. If you were to describe a chicken, this is a chicken.
Use that question too.
There's a chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I like this chicken. I think that's a pretty one. But you see where you get into trouble with naming things. Because nothing is ever quite, unless it's a Model A coming off the line, but you think you see what I'm saying. Yep. And I think I'm going again. There we go. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, here we go. Ronaldo doesn't have a mic. He has to type in. He says, I hear 3 different languages associated with this. Sounded French, English, of course, based on the boat. English, of course, based on the boat, but also another older-like language, African-type pattern and intonation. That's pretty cool.
That's excellent.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, I think I wrote down, but it's just based on my visuals, Haitian, Jamaican, and then indigenous peoples. And then we have a question, what should you do if something is not clear in the photo? Should you guess or just ignore it? I suggest you zoom in on it. Lynn says, first of all, report that it isn't clear, then describe what you can see, never ignore anything. And yes, I can see it, but it's small. And then thank you, Lynn. What is it that I can zoom in on it right now. What would you like to see?
Is this a photo out of Fiji?
Hang on a second.
I don't remember where I got this photo. I doubt it's Fiji, no. I think it's more in the Caribbean.
Sharon, I did just give you a mic if you wanted to, oh, the color of people's eyes. Ugh. I don't know if we can do that well. I can try. Oops, that's not it.
Oh, what's the color of people's eyes?
What? I don't think it's going to do it. Maybe it's about as good as... At least on my machine. I think that's maxed out right there. Okay, back over. The texting area is not very big, so I have to keep looking over and scrolling to see what you guys have had to say. And believe it or not, we've been at this an hour. Not such a bad hour. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Is everybody, here we go, here's a question. From Ronaldo, I often work on cases where I perceive birds and notice more about their biological structures, like talons versus web feet, as it often gives a geological location in regard to nesting, breeding, feeding, etc. when I have an active target to view. Very good.
Yeah, there was a missing person that we had once, and we were to describe the location. And, you know, once you describe a forest with trees, I mean, what are you going to do? And I just happened...
There's deciduous, there's pine, there's scrub.
Yeah, and you've just covered half the U.S., you know. But I just happened to notice an outcropping of rock, and I got curious, and I went over and I said, chert. And you know, instead of saying rock, I'm a rock hound, and so I know the different kinds of rock. And so I noticed that this rock is made of chert. Well, it so happens that there was one major outcropping of that type of rock in the area where the where the child had gone missing, and they went out there and put their search around there. And I never got feedback on this, because once the police solve a case, they move on to, they've got 40 more waiting. But I always have hoped that they found the kid. We didn't get any more questions about that one, and so I'm supposing they found the child. But sometimes your knowledge like this, the type of bird, a web-footed bird is not going to be found in the mountains. They're going to be found by water. Okay, that's why they have web feet. And you know, these things become important.
Yeah, that's just like if you hear sounds. Sometimes a sound will give a location away, or smells.
You've been watching too many movies. I'm joking. I never was good at sound.
You can learn a lot from Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid of what you might learn.
Okay, well, I was looking to see if there were any more questions popping up. I'm not finding any. Here's one. Question. I tried very hard not to actually list what something was. Rather, I tried to only use descriptive words that related to each sense. I'm trying to figure out how to avoid allowing my conscious mind to contaminate what I'm seeing by jumping in and assigning a name to an object. So for these exercises, it's okay to go ahead and name items. So we have another question following that one.
Well, no, you don't want to name items when you're doing P2. You just want to describe.
Well, that's true when you're doing remote viewing. You want to always set the items to names to the side, like boat, because when you report a boat, 20 different people will get 20 different images in their mind. And so in training people to do remote viewing, we tell them, get rid of the nouns and describe only. However, when you're doing something like this for your vocabulary and for your kids to start recognizing things and to be able to get details, then sure, they can see that this is a boat and that's a pier and that's a some kind of power pole sticking up and things like that. And on another one, they'll see another boat, and it gives them a well-rounded idea of what boat is. And it's like Plato's chair. A lot of people haven't heard of Plato's chair, but Plato said that there is the perfect chair in heaven, and because there is something sacred about each one of us, we can all tell where we can sit down and where we can't, because we know the concept of chair and can recognize it in all its many forms. And if you're doing this for your children, and if you're doing this to expand your own awareness and your own vocabulary, sure, go ahead and use those nouns. It will teach you all the different variations of what a boat is, what a pier is, what a pole is, things like that.
No, and I remember this from class. Looks like this was probably wired to have 4 light bulbs. I'm only seeing 1. It's a little difficult to blow up to that level, but you would think that there would be 4. I'm only seeing 1.
I see more than that.
You see?
I see the rectangular box up on top.
Yeah,
that looks like some kind of. Looks like there's 2 lights on top. Plus, it looks like it might be a screen that might have either like red bulbs in it or something like that.
Right, I know what you're saying, but I meant light bulbs on the end of these poles.
Yeah, at the end of the arms.
Yeah.
You see the one. I don't see ones on the other either.
Yeah.
See, here you would
take for granted. That's what I was getting at.
See, in this case, that rectangular box on top, I wouldn't know what it is. So I would try to describe it best I could. I wouldn't know if it's a box that lights up or if it's just an extension of the pole. It looks like now at a closer observation that they're stringing wires from those 2 nubby things sticking up from the rectangular box. Looks like they're made of wire.
Things. Yeah. As an analyst, I'm going to come back and ask you, what is a nubby thing? What does nubby thing mean to you?
Short peg.
Okay.
Well, it looks like there's wires that are going across to the other pole, almost like telephone pole wires. And I still can't tell if there's bulbs at the end of the other three arms.
I only see one, but
if you put it up to 400% resolution, you can see.
Right there's 400.
Yeah, you can see the bulbs, and on the left side of that near pole, it looks like it might be a cloud in back, but it's actually a bulb.
You think?
And yeah, and you can sort of imagine seeing bare bulbs over on the other end too. But anyway, that's minutia, but that's
no, I think it's important.
this is exactly how you go about getting details on things, and this is good.
And that's exactly why I picked the light bulb, so we'd have a little conversation about that. Because it's possible. There's some white there.
Does anybody see that bird that's 400 miles away? Flying?
Glad you picked that up.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's missing 3 feathers out of its wing.
I'm looking to see if there's anything else we can have a little discussion about. What do we think it looks like?
Well, we were going to look at eyes.
Well, I tried, but
Lyn's
there are
got
2
400
rows.
resolution.
I remembered something from our discussion. There are 2 rows of people. Look at the feet. Okay, feet are going, and on the back side, the folks have dropped their bales off, and they're circling back on the back side. And look at the lady with the pink skirt, and then her feet, and in between the lady in front of her, check the lady in behind her. Her foot is tipped forward in the opposite direction. Those guys are coming back.
Yeah, and there's nothing on her head, which leads you to believe.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's very obvious in the picture, but also it leads you to show that whatever it is they're taking out there, they're leaving probably in the boat or just throwing into the boat and then turning around and coming back.
By the way, what do you think those stumpy things are? There are 3 of them.
We're in a picture.
Yeah, you think, sorry. At the base of the light pole, there's in between 2 of them. I think those are wood.
Yeah, those are the pier pilings that stick up.
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing, but why don't we have them, why do we only have 3 out at the end? Wonder what happened to the
I think those are used to tie ships off, aren't they?
Yeah, but if you look.
Oh, there's 4 actually. There's another one way out at the end.
Yeah, and if you look, there are no poles down between where they are and back at the end of the picture. Well, there is actually 1 pole back here. Yeah.
So I wonder why those got to stay. Well, look
like
at the
Dan
tires.
says, like Dan says, they put these up above so that you can tie up the boats. And you notice the tires are there simply to keep the boat from smashing up against the pier.
Right.
And the tires are only where those poles sticking up are, because that's where you tie off the boat.
Right. I guess they knew ahead of time they would never ever want to tie a boat up any closer in than those right there.
Well, no. With most piers, you don't see those things. Well, you don't see those things sticking up where the water is too shallow and can trap a boat.
Right.
And so that's part of the design of a pier.
And actually, there's 5. The guy with the yellow shirt is leaning on one, or has his arm outstretched alongside one. Another question. When an image gets stuck, like fixated on an image, how do you move past these types of imaging? Scrolling is a bit of a problem. I guess that's the end of that question. How do you move past these types of images? And I think that Ronaldo means in session.
like in a remote viewing session, generally what you do is you try to cue yourself with something you've already gotten. Like, let's say you've already gotten that something is Pepto-Bismol color, but now then you're describing these tires and you get fixated on them. You just kind of back off and you go back and you say, okay, what descriptor does not apply to what I'm fixated on? You cue yourself with that and you say, oh, let me go look at the Pepto-Bismol colored thing. And then you've broken yourself away from the thing you're fixated on.
Okay. Yeah, we call them in remote viewing, we call them move commands. Move to a point of interest. Like Ronaldo mentions that he RV'd that there's mountains in the foreground. And yeah, if you move yourself to move on land and behind a pier, you know, a couple 100 feet, you may be able to describe what's there and see even further. So that's what makes remote viewing such a gem, because if you're in a session, you can move around and you can investigate anything that's there. You can take the woman in the white dress and say, what's her health? And you could do something like that. And you can literally check out her health and find out if there's anything wrong with her. Or you can check her mood, or you can check what she ate for breakfast in the morning. Whatever you can think of, you pretty much can relate to remote viewing.
Yeah, and the thing is, you won't have feedback on that from the picture, but when you actually get to working for somebody, and like in the remote viewing, you have used these pictures as a way to train yourself to see things. When a customer comes in and says, you know, I have a picture of a building, tell me what's going on inside. They don't want you to describe what's in the picture. They want you to describe what's not in the picture.
Right.
And if you can describe a picture like it's sealed in an envelope, and you can show through hundreds of pictures that you have like a 90% accuracy rate of describing what you don't see, because the picture is locked in an envelope while you're working, then you can say to that customer, I'll describe what I find inside the building, and I have a 90% accuracy, so, you know, give me 10% leeway here. But it gives the customer a real idea of how much he can depend on what you say, and so forth. And so, like I say, using these to learn to communicate with yourself and with others is one purpose of these pictures. When you're a remote viewing student and you're learning to remote view, these pictures also let us lock one of these things into an envelope so that you never see it until after you've described it. And when that happens, you know, then we take the picture out and we see how accurate you are. And this is how we train remote viewers. Now, for a lot of people who are not familiar with remote viewing, that seems like an impossible task. Actually, it winds up being very easy.
Right. I'm a seasoned intermediate level remote viewer, and I have been amazed time after time at how you can have absolutely no idea what a target is and sit there with 6 digits and start working a target, and when you get to the end, you have so much information, and you look at your feedback photo and you're like, wow, I got it. How did I do that?
Yeah, in the military, one time we got a picture from one of the intelligence agencies, and it was a picture of a roof of a building. And they had tried to get spies and ground agents and all that into this building to find out what was going on. And this building was about a mile from a body of water. And so they tasked one of the remote viewers to tell what was going on inside the building. And he gave a report that they were building humongous submarines in there, bigger than any submarine that's ever been built, that they had 2 of them in there. And he gave the date of completion. He also gave the date when they would actually dig a channel from the water up to the building so they could float this submarine out. And he gave the date and the time of day when they would float this submarine out of the building. And it was the Russian Boomer submarine, the largest submarine that's ever been built. And they actually diverted a spy-in-the-sky satellite to be over it right at that exact moment. And for almost 20 years, that was the only picture that the U.S. intelligence agency ever had of that submarine. And one of the remote viewers did this over nothing but a picture of a rooftop. And so, you know, once you learn to describe and once you learn to communicate with your subconscious mind, you can do this stuff. And you can tell what's not in the picture as well as what is. And so anyway, that's a jab for remote viewing. If you're not into remote viewing, and if you're just here to find out how to, you know, develop your own communication skills, then this is a great exercise for doing it.
Yeah, and the percentage of people that can be decent remote viewers, 95% of the people out there. Just takes practice.
Well, we've been at this for an hour and a half, and I just looked over, and there's another statement. Thank you all for this amazing opportunity to attend this seminar. It gives those of us who are working in this field much motivation and devotion to continue and develop ourselves. Thank you. That's why we're doing this, actually. Thanks to Lyn for dropping in. I swore to him, I said, you do not have to be tied to these ventures that I'm throwing out there at people. But if you want to show up, we will be more than happy to welcome you with open arms. And thank you, Dan, for showing up. You've described so many targets for the rest of us in all our courses. It was great to have you here. It's great to have a conversation with somebody, because the people who haven't been exposed to this, I mean, it's so much better than just sitting here presenting something from a PowerPoint. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. It's nice to see everybody here.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I always come to yours because yours are interesting.
That's right.
Well, that's because you can say that because I don't think anybody else is out there, so I kind of have a corner on the market. So if you're going to put in a plug, you know, thanks a lot.
By the way, I'm having dinner next Tuesday evening with a nurse who is doing the same exact thing that you are and getting intuition into the nursing place, and I'm going to hook the 2 of you up together. I think the 2 of you could do wonders for the nursing profession.
Thank you.
I think, Teresa, you're already doing wonders. The 2 of you are good.
Great. Well, we're having some thank yous roll in, and we appreciate you guys coming. And
yeah, Teresa, thank you for putting this on.
You're welcome. Stay tuned. I don't have enough hours in the day, but I have a lot of ideas, and I just hopefully there'll be a newsletter coming out. And if it didn't come out this afternoon or this evening, it should be hitting the presses tomorrow. And my goal is to try and communicate through that newsletter what do we have coming from who and when. And if you want to subscribe to it, feel free. I didn't draft anybody except Lyn and Linda. I drafted them, but other than that, feel free to sign up for Aesthetic Impact e-news and check back to the WebEx site for presentations to see what's been added.
Yeah, and give yourself a plug here. Any presentations coming up?
Well, gee, yes, there are actually. Cindy is asking, will there be more of these practice sessions? Yes, as soon as Teresa can get her little schedule book out and figure out what evening she's, not doing something like overtime and is going to do these again. But yeah, that's my plan, to have, at least one of these a month, and maybe more. Who knows? And we have a lot of presentations coming up. Let's see, Angela Smith has signed up, Angela Thompson-Smith, for several in a cultural series. We've got telepathy, more out-of-body experiences, meditation. Oh, geez. Help me out here, you guys. I could probably check my mail and see what kind of invitations I've sent out. Lyn and I are going to be doing another controlled remote viewing analysis, another phase or introduction to theory. Let me see, because I can't jump around just too much out here.
Well, there's also, if I can plug myself for a second, I'll be opening up classes for doing remote viewing exercises, and that should be starting up pretty soon again. That'll probably be on Pal Talk. I'll let Teresa know if she ever wants to plug it on here when I get started again.
Okay.
So that'll probably start in a couple weeks.
But, of course, Angela has, I'm trying to think, she was going to teach a class on shamanic, I'm trying to think how she termed it. Now I can't find any of these. Also, Marty Rosenblatt is hopefully going to put together something with applied remote viewing and precognition. What we're looking at is a date when there's a baseball game, because that would be a short-term result, and so we could work on learning precognition and how we would look at the data, and then we would have feedback directly afterward. So a baseball game is a good short-term, exciting, well, some baseball games aren't so exciting, but you see what I'm saying. You don't have to wait days or weeks or months. Let's see. Tomorrow, tomorrow we're having a target of the week where I actually running a little behind. One of these days I'll be a little further ahead. If I do it too far ahead, then people won't, they'll forget. But I just sent out coordinates for a target that we're going to work tomorrow night. And Lyn, this is even a surprise for you. It's not even on your website yet, but I'm sure you're probably going to want to put it there. And it's next month. It's July 9th. Dominique is having transformational effects of learning controlled remote viewing. Not a couple of days, I thought, so it's July. We did not get that one in before the remote viewing conference. Everybody's going to be really busy toward the end of June and a couple weeks after. But Dominique is actually going to tackle the topic of what happens after your world is rocked when you figure out that remote viewing is actually real and precognition is real. Because all of a sudden, you can't put this into a test tube and spin it down. We don't have parameters on it. And so all I can say is it rocks your world, and it takes some adjustment. But anyway, hopefully we'll get some more coming, and if you would like to, okay, July. So anyway, if you'd like to just keep checking www.aiif.webex.com, that's where the full roster will be.
And remember the .webex.com, because if you don't, you get an Australian insurance company.
Great.
If you just do AIIS.com, it's an Australian insurance company. So remember the WebEx in there.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing. All right. Well, I think we're going to call it an evening. And with that, and I appreciate all of your coming, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Teresa, and thanks, everybody, for coming. Hope we can help, and contact us if you have any questions.
Yeah.